Blacksmithing is you're taking metal, you're putting it into a forge, it's getting bright yellow hot, like 2,000 degrees, and you put it on a flat block of metal called an anvil, and you take a hammer in your hand and you start hammering the metal into a certain shape. You're pretty much guaranteed to get minor burns as a blacksmith. But in 2019, I was working on a knife, a specific kind of knife. It's called a Bowie knife. So what you do is you have the blade held in a vise and you're just sanding it over and over and over again. It was in November, it was about 15 degrees outside in the shop. And so I had the forge going. I wasn't actually forging anything at that point, but I had it for just putting out a lot of heat. And so I was next to it for heat purposes. I had never done this, but I had decided I was wearing a polyester hoodie to keep myself warm. And I start realizing that it feels like my back is getting really hot. By the time I started getting really uncomfortable, I reached my hand back and I realized my entire back is on fire. I didn't realize this, but the clothes that I had that were still on fire, I had thrown them away from me, but they hit the walls of the shop I was working in, and those walls started to catch on fire. I had a bucket of water next to me, so I grabbed that bucket of water and I threw it on the walls, and then I realized I was out of water, the fire keeps spreading. So I turned around to run outside to get some more water, and I forgot that the knife that was in the vise was still just hanging out there.
Wow. To talk about what happened next, please welcome to the show, Brandon Deering.
Yes. Wow, Brandon. Hi, Brandon. This is incredible. So take us back, if you don't mind. Your shop is on fire. You're trying to put it out. What do you remember that happens next?
It felt like, because of adrenaline, that time slowed down, and I ran outside to grab more water. I was crawling under barbed wire, breaking frozen water with my boot because the spigot was frozen for the hose.
Oh my God.
So I was just back and forth between the shop and the source of water, that pond, as fast as I could, with as many buckets of water as I could, until I was able to finally put the fire out.
And that whole time you were impaled at the same time?
Yes. So when I turned around to go outside, realizing that I was out of water, I forgot that the knife that I was working on, that had been fully heat treated, tempered, sharpened, it was like a 10-inch razor at this point, was still in the vise. And so I ran into it so hard that it actually bent the side of the knife. So here's the actual knife. I never finished it. I decided to keep it the same size and everything. You can see right here, it's called the tang, where you put the handle on, and it's actually bent right here because I hit the thing so hard. It went through my shoulder, it through my arm, and stopped on my rib cage, and it hit it so hard it actually chipped one of my ribs. And then I just pulled the knife out and then just ran outside and kept running to get more water, because at that point I realized, you know, I need to keep the shop from burning down. Once it gets to be too big of a fire, the entire shop is going to go. So,
Brandon, can I really quickly ask, do you feel pain in that moment, or is your adrenaline pumping so hard that you're just in survival mode and pain is not there?
That's a good question.
Feel pain until, as soon as I had the knife hit me, I ran outside, and as soon as that cold air from the outside hit my bare skin on my back, then I started feeling intense burning pain. But at that point, I didn't have time to worry about that. I just had to worry about getting the fire stopped as fast as possible.
Okay, so when did you realize that you should not be here? Like, when did you realize you should have died?
So it was weird. After the adrenaline, the whole thing lasted maybe 2 minutes of putting the fires out. Then I called my dad, who is in St. Louis, who works with me, and I was telling him about it. And, you know, he's like, how did you stab yourself? You know, is this that serious? Then I told him that the knife that I was working on was in a vise, and he said that a chill ran down his spine because he realized that how dangerous that was, because we've known of people that have died from this very thing, where they forget that the knife is in a vise, basically pointing at them, and they step into it, and then they end up skewering themselves. So at that point, when I was talking to my dad, I was realizing, wow, this is getting much, much more serious than I thought it was. The burns are probably much more serious than I thought they were. And then the knife itself, while I'm going to probably need stitches and things like that, at that point I was mainly worried about medical bills and what's this going to cost, and recovery and time off of work and all of that.
Wow. Just wow. So do you live life differently now? Obviously, it looks like you're still a blacksmith, but mentally, do you live life differently?
Oh, for sure. This is the second near-death experience I've had before the age of 25, and this time around in the burn unit, it really changed my perspective on things. I had dozens upon dozens of people visiting me around the clock in the burn unit, bringing me food, praying over me, things like that. So I definitely feel like I'm here for a reason still, because had that knife gone, a quarter of an inch above or below where it went through my arm and hit my chest, it would have gone straight through my rib cage and into my heart, or through my lungs and killed me. And then I would have been stuck in that fire. So definitely I realize I'm still here for a reason, and that God has definitely protected me. So it definitely has changed my perspective on life.
Unbelievable story. Brandon, thank you so much.
And his attitude.
I know. All right, DBL Nation, you can check out Brandon's website, hamandhammer.us. You can also follow him on Instagram. Brandon, what a harrowing story. Thank you for sharing it with us.
For having me.
Coming up on DBL on this special edition of DBL, a woman who cheated death in a high-speed paragliding crash joins us live. What does she remember from those terrifying moments? And the story of a diver who ended up trapped underwater without air for more than 30 minutes. How did he make it out alive?